Hi, I'm Diana, and welcome to my channel. In the first episode, I showed a montage of my beautiful house that I was forced to sell. And the second half of that video, I told you a lot about Martin Becker, the special effects man who was famous for Friday the 13th and who was my husband. He died in the house on Friday the 13th. After I recorded the first video, a lot of my friends came forward and said, "Oh, I want to know more about the Mothman curse." So I researched that, and then I had said that Martin had started Friday the 13th on the 4th episode, but when I actually looked at his IMDb webpage, I realized that he actually started with the second episode of Friday the 13th. And then there were these credits listed for him as himself, and I thought, oh my God, I moved from a big house to a little apartment, and I had to cram everything in a storage place. And I don't know where any of my family videos are anymore. So when I saw the credits for Martin, I pulled up these shows that he's in. They're like the making of Nightmare on Elm Street, the final episode. And I didn't realize he was in there, and I showed my daughter, oh, look, he's in this movie. Well, she goes in the bedroom, and she comes back out like 10 minutes later, Mom, watch this. And there's a clip of Martin, and I haven't seen him or heard his voice in like 20 years. Well, I don't know how long it's been, 15 years. And it was really special to be able to see my husband again. And something I never knew he even did. There's this whole thing called the Mothman curse, and I didn't realize that it existed. I didn't even realize there was a movie called Mothman, and I definitely did not realize Martin worked on it. It says in the credits on IMDb that Martin has a special thanks to Martin Becker credit on the Mothman, which was made in 2002. Well, that's after I was with him, and I was not aware of him working on, he'd go and disappear, and I wouldn't really know what he was doing a lot of times. And I guess he worked on the Mothman kind of in secret. Okay, so after 9/11 in 2001, there was a real dearth of jobs for commercials. Advertisers didn't want to advertise their products. I don't know if it was just they felt it was like not appropriate. Everybody was mourning the loss of 9/11, and there was not much work for commercial special effects. Nobody wanted to blow things up, on a commercial. No one wanted to be violent and like crash a car through a mirror or make a tornado, or nobody could handle anything in America, I think, after that for a couple of years, anything exciting. So, well, maybe they could, because they made the movie The Mothman, which actually is about a disaster of a bridge falling down. So I guess that was sort of on the American psyche. So I guess Martin must have gone off and done this movie to support his family in 2002 or 2001 when they made it, and didn't even tell me. He told me that he was never going to make scary movies again. I can't remember at what point in our marriage he told me that, but he always said, he kind of implied something happened that made him decide he wasn't going to do that anymore. I believe part of it was, in Friday the 13th, there were a lot of crazy ways people got murdered. Like, I didn't realize this until last week when I watched the information about Friday the 13th. I guess there were like decapitations and arrows through the body and axes going down somebody's crotch and splitting them in half and crazy shit, right? So apparently Martin was very creative and came up with a lot of that stuff, or maybe the director did, but Martin was responsible for making it happen. And he told me he didn't want to do scary movies anymore because I thought he said that people were emulating the murders. People were actually in real life murdering people that way. I thought that's what he was implying. But he told me something about somebody laying down in the road, which I just remembered because when I researched the Mothman last week, because I didn't know what it was, even though I mentioned it in my video, it's a movie about a supernatural being that would scare people in this neighborhood in West Virginia, which is based on something that really happened. They saw this giant creature that sort of looked like a giant bird or a bat, and it kept appearing and scaring the crap out of them, and then bad things would happen. This bridge collapsed and it killed like 43 people in this small town. Like everybody on the bridge just got killed, I guess, in a horrific way. And they stopped talking about sighting the Mothman. So then as time went on, they said, well, the Mothman stopped being seen after the bridge collapsed. And they kind of thought, oh, maybe he was there to warn us. And people even had said they sighted him on the bridge before it collapsed. And when they researched the bridge collapse, they found that this one pin missing from the bridge caused the entire collapse. So then the question is, did the Mothman cause it by removing the pin, or did he trying to tell them this pin is missing? So because I'm not an expert on the Mothman, I don't think I should go into a lot of detail on it. I do feel like I want to watch Crystal Lake Memories, which is like a 5-hour miniseries, and I want to watch part of that with my kids just to see. It's dedicated to Martin Becker. So I want to see what they say in there. We watched the very first Friday the 13th movie, and it was so old-fashioned in a way. It was like we didn't really go on to see the rest of the Friday the 13th movies. But I want to watch some of this with my kids and just see what they say, if they tell about how the hockey mask originated or anything. But anyway, I'm being nostalgic about Martin, and the main point I wanted to make is that Martin was very non-confrontational. Apparently he was a little secretive because he didn't tell me he was going to do the Mothman. And then something either scared him or made him feel morally like he should stop doing scary movies. I think that was before the Mothman. But there's this curse, supposedly, that if someone works on a movie or talks about the Mothman, like, now I'm thinking, oh God, did I just curse myself? But supposedly there's this list of people who worked on the Mothman movie who were killed. Of course, they're all mostly natural causes or years later, so how can you pin that on the Mothman? I don't know. But the weird thing is, when I was researching this and reading about what the Mothman looks like, this is really weird, but there was this time when I saw this really giant bird in my neighborhood, and I posted it on Facebook. I was trying to find the post on Facebook so I could share it on here. And it was years ago. It was so many years ago. But I remarked on Facebook, oh my God, I just saw this really giant bird. And when I saw it, I was walking down the street, taking my dog for a walk. So it had to be before Martin died, because that's when I had a dog most of that time. And there was this huge, silent bird. It looked like it had wings like between 6 and 10 feet long. It was huge, but I didn't really see it, you know? It's like I started to look up because I saw the shadow start moving, and as I looked, it was in the trees, and it kind of just disappeared. It flew so fast, and it was about 6 feet across to 10 feet across the wingspan. I thought it was 10 feet across, but I don't think that's possible. And then it was silent. And I just was posting on Facebook, like, does anyone know what this could be? What giant birds do we have in LA? And I assumed it must be a great horned owl, but I don't think a great horned owl even is that big. And now I'm reading about the Mothman, and it's saying it's a harbinger of death or a warning, right? And I'm thinking how that did happen before Martin died. So maybe it was like a warning or the Mothman, you know? But part of me is also thinking there are really big birds, and a lot of times there's these unexplained phenomenon that actually are natural events. So I was thinking, what kind of giant bird could it have been? And I did some research, and I'm thinking it might have been that there was a California condor, which it's almost extinct bird that they brought back at the LA Zoo by hatching a whole bunch out of eggs, and training them with puppets that look like a bird's head and feeding the babies with this puppet. And they released them out in the wild, and they're coming back, and they're kind of ugly. And I'm thinking I might have seen a California condor, but not really seen it, you know, it just kind of went by too fast. And it was huge. I was just kind of terrified when I saw it. It was just like really weird. But the Native Americans in LA, I guess, from the hikes I've taken and the education I've gotten from these naturalists, believed that different animals symbolize different things. So a condor, I'm supposed to have remembered this. I looked up so many birds. I looked up herons and owls, and but I think condors are possibly an omen of death anyway. So even if it was a condor, it could have been sort of a supernatural experience in that it was a warning that someone was going to die. There's this other weird thing that happened when Martin was dying. We had this deer that always came around our yard. I put in this pond and this waterfall so that the deer would have some place to drink, because we've always had these wildfires in LA and heat waves, and the deer don't have a place to go, and the wild cats and, you know, all the birds, there's water birds in LA, believe it or not. I actually looked out my window one time and I saw a duck in my little pond, and my pond was only the size of this couch, so it was kind of a weird sight. One time I looked out, when I was in my darkest days, I looked out the window and there was this huge great blue heron on the roof, which is also a very large silent flying bird, and it was beautiful. And the reason it was there is because I put fish in the pond and it was trying to eat the fish. This weird thing that happened was that I had this herd of deer, and we had many sightings. Like one time there were 9 of them in my yard, and they were laying down with their babies, and it was so beautiful. But my friend, who does nature hikes and tells me things about Indian lore, told me that deer are supposed to be the escorts to the other side, the escorts to the spirit world. And the funny thing is, when Martin was dying, all the deer gathered on the hillside that looks into the window of our bedroom, and they were just gathered there. Some of them were eating, but mostly they were just standing around. It was kind of weird that happened on the day he died, almost like they were waiting for him.